Hello and welcome to this review of my Focus FK-8000 KeyCal. It was made in 1993 in China, and in my opinion, Focus were one of the most interesting keyboard manufacturers on the market. And this one is no exception. It is definitely among my more interesting keyboards, though it is also by far the most willful and temperamental one. I've been looking to get a working example of these for a while now, and I got a nice deal for this one. It appeared to be new in box on the advert, and indeed it did come in its original box, which I've got here. But when I got it, it turned out to be not in as good a condition as I hoped. There was a lot of dust in the switches, which I had to painstakingly clear out myself. 7 keycaps snapped off, which I had to glue back in place. And there are weird pen markings all over the keycaps and the case, especially the bottom row of keys has that. I'll show that now to you. And the control key has it. Let's refocus here for a second. And control key has it quite a lot, and these keys have it, spacebar has it, some along here, and the case has quite a few here. Fortunately, the seller was extremely reasonable, and we worked out a deal in the end though. Almost all old Focus keyboards had at least one interesting feature, and the most obvious one, on this one at least, is the built-in calculator with its own display here. It uses a 3-volt flat lithium-ion cell battery, just like this. In fact, this is the original battery. I replaced it with a more modern one just to be sure. And because it uses a battery, you can use the calculator even when the computer is not on, so it runs semi-independently off of it. The way it works is it uses the numpad, and a few extra keys have been added. These memory keys, clear key, on key, and a toggle key. And the way this works is when it's up, you can use this like a normal numpad, and the calculator doesn't do anything with it. But when you switch to calculator mode, the numpad no longer sends any scan codes to the computer, so the computer doesn't get interfered by running the calculator. If you use keyboard mode and then any of the extra keys, like the memory keys, the computer does make a sound though. I'll show you that. That sound, I'm not too sure what that means really. Here's just a quick demo of me using the calculator. First we switch from KB to calc mode, like that. Then we switch it on. Then let's say 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. Add to memory. 9 divided by memory recall equals 1.5. Memory clear, on, back to keyboard mode. Several Focus keyboard models had a calculator like this, and all of them are super unreliable. Usually the calculator, the board, or both don't work, and the battery inside might have leaked if the insulating strip was taken away. So it's not easy to find one that works well, even though this keyboard is not all that uncommon. Mine does work, the board works, the calculator works, but the display is not the best. If you display a lot of characters, some of the digits will start missing. I'll show you that now. So as you can see, it becomes quite vague. You can't really see all the digits all that well anymore, which is a shame really, but it's still functional with small amounts of numbers. The keyboard has an interesting layout. It's from before 1995, so it doesn't have Windows keys. And it also has a big-ass enter key like this, which is actually my favorite type of enter. But in order to accommodate for this, you need to sacrifice space for another key elsewhere. And what many layouts do is that they put that key here and then have a small backspace unit. But that is extremely horrible. I don't know who thought that that would be a good idea. So there are some alternatives, and on this keyboard they stuck the extra key here between the Alt and Control key, which is normally where a recess would be in Windows keyless boards. Here I'll show you what that normally looks like. This is another Windows keyless board, and you can see it has a little hole here, and they simply put the extra key there. Now on the other side, on Win keyless boards, there is also a recess, and for aesthetic reasons on this one, they put a blank key here. So it doesn't read anything on it. But this key is not purely cosmetic. You can press it, it has a switch under it, even PCB traces, and it even generates scan codes. If I press it, then it will show here 0x56. In other words, it generates scan code 56, which is not normally in use. If it does appear, it's almost always blank keys like this. Still, it does actually have an output. If I go to Notepad and press it a couple of times, you will see that it generates a backslash. In other words, this key generates exactly the same output as the backslash in the other recess. But the computer does know they're different. If you try to bind in, for example, a video game, something to this key, it will usually call it something like OEM 102, so the 102nd key, or OEM backslash, and it knows that it's not the same. So if you bind something to the blank key and you press the backslash key, or the other way around, it will not trigger it. So it definitely does know that it's a separate key and it's fully functional. On the reverse side of the keyboard, we find the model sticker, FK-8000, made in China. And here you can see the flip-out feet, which are fairly broad, but they work quite well. They stabilize very well. Here's the AT-XT switch, because it uses a 5-pin DIN connector, and it has some non-slip pads here. Then I put a sticker here myself to remind myself which of the keys had snapped off and which I therefore glued back on. I can't disassemble those anymore, so it's a useful reminder to have. And finally, there is this compartment where the battery of the keyboard is held. It uses a variety of different switches, probably what was on hand at the time and or the cheapest. Most of them are this type of switch, called type OA2 Alps clones, which is a clicky switch, and they're quite close in construction to real simplified Alps. There are also examples of an unidentified clicky clone that's a little bit different. There's a few real Alps switches in there, and the lock keys use genuine linear Alps switches with an integrated LED, which looks like that. And the reason that they went for linear switches is because the LED is in the place where the clicky leaf normally goes. So it isn't physically possible to make switches like that that are still clicky. And the keycaps have a little open window there that you can see the LED through, which looks quite nice. The toggle button for the calculator is a Futaba lock switch, which has a follower arm at the front, and it's a latching action switch. So if you press it, it stays down, and then it pops back up if you press it again. Here is a comparison of the various types of switches used in this keyboard using this stainless steel switch holder. If you want to buy one of these, by the way, check out the video description below. On the left is a genuine complicated white Alps switch. Next to that is one of the type OA2 clones, which is what the vast majority of this keyboard is made up of. And next to that is one of the unidentified clones, of which there are just a few. I've also included a Matthias click switch in this, just for comparison. Now, the clones feel a little bit lighter than the genuine Alps switch, but they also don't feel quite as clean. They're a little bit more scratchy. And in addition, the sound they make is more high-pitched and more hollow. And I'll demonstrate that to you now. The genuine Alps switch has a much fuller and bassier sound than the other two. So you can definitely tell that the Alps switch sounds quite different. Personally, I like this sound a bit better. Neither of the two clones sound quite as hollow as the Matthias switch though, but the Matthias switch does feel considerably cleaner than either of the clones. Here, I'll demonstrate the sound again for you. The keycaps are made with double shot lettering, as with almost all old Focus keyboards. They're quite thin, but they're still nice and high quality, and Alps double shot keycaps aren't easy to find outside of Focus keycaps. Further to that, there is lots of colored lettering going on. The escape key is red, both of the control keys are red, and the keyboard on the keycap is red, and the shifts are green, and both of the alts are blue, as is the toggle button. And this has secondary colored legends too, so it's a fairly colorful keyboard, and the keycaps are pretty nice. The construction of the keyboard is kind of average. Slightly rattly casing, and there's a bit of flex in there. Squeaks a bit, but it's not too bad. But frankly, the construction is not really of any importance because its susceptibility to electrical failure, rather than anything else, means that the mechanical sturdiness of the keyboard is almost irrelevant. Due to the presence of the calculator, this thing just doesn't really always work. Overall, this keyboard is great fun, but is unreliable as all hell. If you can get one that's working, which almost certainly will entail buying one that is still new in its box, it's great fun, and I could definitely recommend you to try that out. But at the very least, ask to have it tested and confirmed, because, like I said, it is so unreliable that the odds of you finding just one that immediately works out of the blue are really not all that great. Anyway, that just about sums it up as far as the review of this keyboard goes, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.